Spicy. Calling the meeting to order. We have a roll call.
Yes, President Zuka,
Here.
Vice President Jordan. Here. Director Wheeler.
Here.
Director Schmidt.
Here.
Director Vella.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Since I won't have the general manager, please lead us.
I pledge
Would you lead
allegiance
us
to the flag
of the America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm ready now.
Excellent. Item number 2, public comment. Do we have any?
I did not receive any.
Okay. Moving on to item number 3, any additions, deletions, or changes to the consent?
I just had one correction that I shared
Sure.
with the general manager. The vice president, Jordan did not lead the Pledge of Allegiance on February 22nd. It was Misty.
Sorry, I couldn't remember who did it. So
No, it's okay. I want to give her credit because she so graciously agreed to do it.
Very good.
That correction?
Got it. Hearing no others. Moving on to 4, we have no acknowledgements or presentations, and moving on to 5, consent agenda.
No, I guess this is what I should have said.
That's fine. You're fine. I'd like a motion to approve consent.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we need, how did we do a roll call on this on consent?
No.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent is approved. Item number 6, moving on, hearings and appeals none. Item number 7. None as well for COP certificates and participation. And we're on to the regular business agenda, item 8A, which is the mid-year review of the capital and operating budgets. So, Kat?
All right. Well, I think James, you're here.
Hi. Yeah, do you want me to take point on this, Kat?
Yes, please.
All right, so before you, we've got just a summary of the mid-year budget adjustments. So what we're asking is actually to reduce the operating expenditures by 320,000. We haven't spent as much as we had initially anticipated, and we don't expect that we're going to need the full amount, but also to increase our budget related to total revenues by approximately $1.2 million. And there's a couple reasons why, but primarily the big reason for the operating or non-operating revenue is because we had received that significant payment for the Aqua JPIA check for about $540,000 that was coded into miscellaneous non-operating revenue. And so we've just seen significant, and then there's other items that are being included in there, kind of miscellaneous items that we've seen coming in that we're expecting through the end of the year. That was the biggest change related to that. The other piece for that is investment income due to increasing interest rates, increasing, we now have the investments with the US Treasuries and additional amounts. So we've seen a significant uptick of interest rates, and you'll see later on, the budget to actual at this point is almost 100% if you don't include fair market value, and fair market value brings it up to over 100% of where we're at for budget. So we are expecting a significant amount more of interest revenue coming in over the next 4 months. For expenses, we've had a number of adjustments. The biggest one would probably be salaries and wages. So we've experienced approximately 435,000 in savings for between salaries and wages and just overall benefits due to vacant positions that are actually now being completely full, or mostly full anyways. So that's the biggest drop that we've seen in salaries and benefits. And then we've had other items that we've adjusted, such as the lawn be gone rebates and rain barrel rebates that we haven't seen as much activity that we were expecting at the beginning of the year. So we reduced those budgets by approximately 73,000. And then we had a couple offsets, particularly for meters and service. So we increased that budget by 106. And, this is, we're buying more meters as well as the costs have been going up, specifically for those, just materials and supplies. And then the next big increase, as you all know, is the property lease. So we had originally budgeted to be, at that office for a short amount of time, but now that we're going to be there for the next couple of years, we increased the budget to match what's actually going to be spent for the rest of the year. So there's about $130,000 increase related to the office space lease. Another drop that we had down in professional services. I know it says it's approximately $1,000 in professional services, but one thing I wanted to highlight is we were able to reallocate about $100,000 in miscellaneous services and reallocate it to identifiable professional services. So for example, the district treasurer amount went up by 80,000, and then we did recruiting. Of course, we had to increase that by 25,000 to recruit for Monique's position. So we had to incur expenditures there. And those were the big changes that we had in regards to the budget for the mid-year portion. And then coming up right after this, we pivot right into doing the budget for the fiscal year 24-25. So the next page we have for our capital budget. And so the OCR improvements, we have basically final costs associated with that. And we had originally budgeted $5.6 million for the current year. And we're expecting only 4.9 complete. So we've got, we're programming a reduction there of 690,000.
And just to clarify, the 5.6 was the engineer's estimate, and then the actual bid came in, so we don't have final costs until we're done.
And some of that may roll over to next fiscal.
Yeah, our best guess.
Yep. The other one is Hastings service connection replacement. There was no budget related to that. So but there was work done, of course, related to that. So we included a budget amendment for that. And I believe that project is complete, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then some minor adjustments for trucks and the Folger Drive property improvements, as well as the Dairy Lane Operations Center rehab design. So those are the big items for the budget.
Any questions? Do you want to point out also the next page is an updated org chart that reflects the salary estimates in there. And one change you'll notice is the water resources coordinator position is back on the org chart, and we have a new person starting on Monday in that position.
Which one is that?
The water resources coordinator.
Any questions from board members?
Is the lead operator position still open, or is, I was confused because the operations report said that we just hired somebody. Right?
Yes, we have one position open.
One.
On the ops team. Three, four now?
We've hired four since,
yeah.
October.
I think.
Yeah, since October. it's
Four
people.
recently.
I have a question. Kath, we said that we received a large payment of about 540K. How large was it? Did they actually give us everything we asked for? How much did it cost us, and where are we with that?
So they're,
including time and, employees and.
as far as how much time, staff time, I mean, certainly it took
was in
a
last
lot of
month's agenda.
Monique's.
That would bill for that too, or
It
not?
was in last month's agenda. The spreadsheet that they sent us, that
Okay,
I
so how-
itemized all the
Okay,
costs.
roughly how far off are we from what they gave us to what we claimed?
I mean, they gave us a lot of what we wanted. We, wanted more time at the lease here, but, it landed, was it 10
They give
months?
us 11 months.
11 months.
And so the only thing they withheld was what they call depreciation. So once the building is finished, they'll give us, I think it's another 69,000. But as far as wages, you asked about wages. So for wages, what they reimburse us for is anything that is overtime. But otherwise, they consider that to
because
be
it's
a cost to
budgeted
the
already.
district.
Of course.
So, but we did go, I did include a lot of the overtime, even, so sometimes a couple of nights when there was more storms, some of our guys stayed overnight, they paid for that. We also had, somebody who stayed in a hotel just so he could be, on call overnight, they paid for that. There was another, Jonathan had to be there to work with RMS for 2 different days, like Saturday and Sunday, to oversee them on our site. They paid for that. So they paid for pretty much everything that we asked for. We did have to give a little bit on the overtime because I included everything and they were like, no, we just do overtime. So we went back and forth, but they did give us 11 months instead of the original. I think they wanted to give us 9 months at first. So then they agreed to 11.
All right, on the interest rate, we're doing pretty good, so that's a very, very good
Yeah.
move from everybody. Yeah, so Kirk and I reviewed this already. The changes are, as you can see, changes are very minor. We've seen this before. And I think we're ready to go,
Okay.
unless,
Just one quick question. Looking at the revenues line, the original proposed mid-year and an amendment, should the amendment be the difference between original and proposed mid-year? Showing only 41,000. It's on page 16.
Yeah, I think that's the change.
Yeah, so we're asking to amend the budget by that amount.
But the difference between the original and the proposed for revenues is
Oh.
about just under 500,000, and it says amendment is 41,000.
Oh, 493, 550, yep.
it should be 493, 550. That's the same thing I heard.
No, you saw
Looking at all
that
of that, yeah.
too.
But
Yeah, I was like, am I
business-
missing something?
Yeah, I saw the same thing. I think it was a big typo, but it should be 493, 550.
I think that's in the resolution as well.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So is the total revenue amendment, is that also wrong?
And then on page 18, I wrote the same thing. How was this arrived at?
The total is 1214700.
When I look at, I'm sorry,
The proposed mid-year should be 16,405,700.
Okay, so if,
Well, I guess the question is the, yeah,
The proposed
the
is wrong.
proposed mid-year is
Yeah.
correct on the table.
Yeah.
At 14,054.
right,
But it's wrong
It's wrong in the summary.
on the summary.
front page and then a resolution.
James, what's it gonna be?
So, yeah, the final budget for revenues will be 16,405,700. So the change was correct. It's that number, the projected or the final budget amount was pulling from the projected, so that number is wrong.
The proposed was wrong.
Yeah.
The expense side looks like it's correct. 13,394,500. The expense side is correct. It was the revenue piece that's pulling from the wrong column.
Okay, so we have a greater net surplus then.
We have a what?
So does that increase?
No,
No. Oh, wait,
No.
decrease. No. Okay.
no, it should be the same, just the proposed.
So just to be clear, we're all on the same page. The total revenue sources, that is correct, the amendment for, is 1,215,700.
He's shaking his head, yes.
Yes.
Okay, got it. I can't even see him shake his head on the screen. Okay,
Sorry, you want
Got
it
it.
bigger? I don't.
So if we were to propose this resolution, does Monique have the correct numbers? Because these numbers are in the resolution.
Gonna be proposed
Right.
subject to the correction.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. it has to
Yeah,
be
I-
done that
You got it?
The change for the proposed mid-year total revenue is 16,405,700. Correct?
I think so.
That's the number, right, James?
Yes.
405,700. The table.
It's on page 20, the table on page 20's got the right number.
Yeah.
So
we're
I guess the
changing it on-
resolution would be approve the resolution, but made consistent with table on page 20.
And the resolution should say that.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
All right, shall I try it?
Go for it.
My motion is for, I move resolution 2024-03 with the table amended to be consistent with the numbers on page 20 of today's staff report. That good?
Second.
A second.
Okay, motion and a second. Can I get a roll call vote?
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Vice President Jordan,
Yes.
Director Wheeler.
Yeah.
Director Vella,
Yes,
and President Zuko.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Item 8B is considering a resolution to authorize the general manager for a contract with Nolan Jam.
All right, let me ask, did Scott join us?
Yes.
Yes, great, so, hi Scott, Scott from Nolan Ham is here to answer any questions. You know, in our last meeting, if you recall, the board directed us to work with Nolan Ham to come up with a scope to do the design work for the Folger Drive project, convert it, not convert it, to bring it back to its use, for use as an emergency operations center, including some improvements, including bringing a prefab metal shop building, and seismic upgrade, as well as, you know, conversion or change of, or update of office space, and the like. And so, in your packet, you have the full proposed scope of work from Nolan Tam. It includes 4 main phases: the schematic design, design development, construction documents, and support with bidding and negotiation. It also includes a number of sub-consultants, including that for structural engineering, mechanical and plumbing engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, cost estimation, and Title 24 documentation. We don't have a specific consultant identified, but it includes, you know, a budget in there, an allowance for a landscape architect, and we have, you know, some ideas on that ourselves. So you have the kind of breakdown of the different phases of work, as well as Nolan Tam's cost versus the subs here, in the staff report. The total budget is estimated at $405,580. We have the resolution written to include a 10% contingency, which, you know, is standard. And so with that 10% contingency, that brings the total to 446,000 in the resolution. So, let me ask if anyone has questions on the scope of work or anything related to that.
Any questions?
I'm gonna go into more detail.
Just scope of work or everything?
Well, anything, but yeah, but it's mostly the scope of work that's getting approved, so.
I have questions further on in the document, so. Should go into that?
In the document, in this item?
In this item.
item? Oh, yeah, it's inside. Go for it.
Okay. Page 28, sustainable goals and criteria. Says voluntary tiers. No additional tiers are proposed for the project. I don't really know much anything about that, especially for buildings like this. Is there any value in looking at additional?
We talked about it a fair bit, talked about lead, and does it make sense for a project like this, and what does that actually mean? And part of it was, the Cal Green standards have improved so much that, for a lot of things, they get you already to where you would be for lead, except you have the additional work and documentation for lead. So certainly, we're particularly, environmental sustainability minded, and wherever there's a decision point on that, that's where we lean, but we're not going for specific certifications. I think probably the best and greenest thing we can do is we're reusing an existing building, and we're not, trying to replace certain features and fixtures for the sake of replacing them. We're using them if they're there, if they're good. Now, Scott, if you have anything.
Yeah, I would say the things that are advantage beyond the sort of the standard voluntary elements for the green building code are, conservation of water, and Kat and I and Rena talked quite a bit about, obviously, any of the landscaping providing, California native drought tolerant plants, et cetera, and having irrigation appropriate for that. The other piece is energy, an all electric building, except for, the backup generator capacity. But that's the other sort of things that are great things to include in a project like this. But I think Kat said it right, that recovering and reusing the existing building is really the biggest sustainable move that we can make. And I don't think there's anything else in the tiers that would really change dramatically what we're doing to renovate the building and seismically improve it as well.
Okay, that sounds fine. Yeah, lead doesn't make much sense in California. And my other question was about all electric buildings. So that's great.
Oh.
Thanks.
Any other questions on this item?
I had some questions just around all of the subcontractors, because the location is going to be challenging. I just wanted to know if any of these subs that have been identified, because not that I would recognize any of them, but have they done work with us before? Are they familiar with the city and kind of working in a small neighborhood environment? And I don't know, Kat, if you have any.
Yeah, so the only one I've encountered, I talked, asked Juben as well, is, BKF. We work with them very frequently. They're always doing projects in the area. They're also very large, and, many different people that we work with. I mean, I haven't worked with any of these other firms, but on the public outreach part, this is something that we talked extensively about. As soon as, the scope gets approved, our first plan of action is going to be to meet with Carlos at the city and get, his perspective and feedback and his experiences, which I think is, we can't really form a public outreach plan until we have that specific knowledge from him. But then that's the next step, is to formulate that plan with that information. So Scott, I assume you worked with all the subs before.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think most of our projects are really in, in neighborhoods and in communities. And, we we're always, working and doing outreach to understand, the impacts the project could potentially have, to neighboring properties, of course. There is complexity here at Folger and in the utility work that's coming out to the south of the site through the adjacent school site, and things that we really want to be sensitive to and understand further, well, so that we can communicate what changes we're making that might impact the neighboring properties.
I mean, my question was sort of along the same lines. I guess I'm not yet seeing a public engagement plan. So I'm a little bit cautious about approving a scope of work where I also don't see a lot of iteration on what the public's gonna say. So if what is then sort of the, we're approving the scope of work. We haven't met with the city and we haven't met with the public. How are we gonna incorporate all that feedback when we're gonna adopt the scope of work tonight?
The way I was viewing it is the public outreach, it's not being done by Nolan Tam. It's gonna affect the schedule and, it's acknowledged in here as well. But I was going, in my mind, I wasn't going to move ahead telling the city we have a project until it has been approved by the board. But that's literally the next, email first thing tomorrow morning is to set up that meeting with Carlos. We could alter that plan, but that was, given that the city has just had an experience in the neighborhood, he'll have insight, that will help us formulate that plan. Also, certainly want to ask him for recommendations on PR firms. If he's got, a strong one he'd recommend, particularly given what he knows about the neighborhood. That would be very helpful for us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of any public engagement. I can imagine we're gonna need some sort of rendering, some sort of quick communication tools developed by architects to communicate what we're planning on doing, what this is gonna look like. So then the question is that in here? If we don't yet know, we're locking in a $405,000 contract tonight. Are we comfortable that we're gonna be able to, we've got a little bit of contingency, around $40,000. But that's kind of for unforeseen stuff. I'd rather not have something that's foreseen. So I mean, if everybody's comfortable that we have the budget here to then accommodate the public side of this, I just look at that as kind of an open-ended item. I mean, I'm happy, I have no issue with the contract itself. I don't have all the pieces in my head falling into place as to how, we would move this across the finish line. So I'm happy to move this forward myself and vote on it. But the only thing that my intuition says we should have a handle on what we need to do from a public outreach standpoint before we're starting to lock in our architect on the scope of work. But maybe that's just me. Happy to move forward on it, and then we can deal with it as we go too.
And my comment to that would be that we have certainly included everything that we would develop in order to get planning and permitting approval to bid, right? So that's included. And I think we write about providing materials to support PR and outreach to the neighbors. And I think we limited that. I think we said like two outreach packages, I guess. And so we're providing all the material support, communicating the scope of the work, what we're doing for the project, and that will tie into what obviously would be presented to the planning department as well. And then as Kat mentioned, the third piece is sort of your PR communications support, where if that's another consultant, but we're happy to meet and put together a plan about how to present to the neighbors and the community as needed with that consultant as well. That's all in our proposal.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of my main concern about, and again, I missed last month's meeting, but I didn't see any tasks in here, so I didn't read every word for word, start to finish, but I didn't see any major tasks in here calling out the outreach side of it. So if you guys feel that it's been addressed in there, then I'm happy to vote on this.
The question, Renee, you remember when we were doing the work up there about the fence, we changed that whole fence there. The neighbors are still the same neighbors up there, or they changed, you know?
No, I think it's still the same neighbors.
Same neighbor?
Yeah, the one we had the lot line issue with, and then of course the other person on the other side, a guy named Randy, that, you know, we've known for years, he's still there.
So the reason I'm mentioning this is that our staff has already some experience. I mean, not at this level, obviously, you know, but I thought that project went pretty well, doesn't it? You know.
Well, I imagine that the neighbor that we had the lot line issue with wasn't really happy with initially, but yeah, I'm not aware of
The
any.
neighbor that's staring at our fence right now, 6
Yeah.
inches away from their window, that
Yeah.
neighbor?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything from the guys, but you're right, I think it went fairly well, you know, other than they probably weren't real
For
excited.
what we wanted to do, I mean, it didn't go too bad, could have been a lot
It could have
worse.
been a lot worse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so maybe we have some in-house information, that's what I was getting at, you know,
Yeah.
don't leave it out.
we do. I mean, I suspect that once we start doing work there, I can't think of Randy's last name, but he will say something, but we know him. And the fellows that work out in the field know him, and they know they can talk to him, and they'll be able to explain things to him, or, you know, we can as well, but I can see him, you know, raising some questions.
Other than that, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a lot.
It's a lot of money.
it is.
Where did that
There's a
money
lot of
come from?
details involved, and there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. And then putting it in for 25% design and 50% design and final.
Yeah.
So at this stage, the only other thing is that there's nothing in there about CEQA stuff. At the moment, I would assume that we expect we're going to be exempt.
Yeah.
But that may come up the same sort of ways if there's something we find, or we have to do a phase one.
I think we were assuming that too. Are we
Yeah.
assuming?
For Dairy Lane, we are, now for this
Yeah.
one, we haven't stated that specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still are making the same reasonable assumption, it will be exempt. Obviously, a near term step will be to reach out to the secret consultant we usually use, and get their thoughts and get.
That will be
But,
some good information to have.
Yeah.
Upfront. If it's possible.
But it's more likely that if we start getting questions from the city, once they hear about the project and find out what it is we're doing, they will start coming up with questions, and we may need some
Yeah,
additional
well,
help.
I'm sure they're gonna start knowing tomorrow. If they pass this today, they'll, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
And just for clarity, this is sort of a time and expense reimbursement for contract, right, contract, right? So it's not fixed fee.
yes, great. Or existing one is. Yeah, it is time and expense,
Okay,
time and materials. And we're doing it as, an amendment to the existing contract, so
Okay.
same terms and everything.
okay, got it. Any other questions? All right, no more questions or statements, I need a motion.
I'll move that we approve resolution 2024-04 authorizing the manager to execute a contract. And then
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Director Wheeler,
yes,
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Bella,
yes,
Vice President Jordan,
Yes.
and President Zuka.
Yes.
We have motion passes.
Fun, fun, fun.
All right,
So presentation on the Ops Center, item 8C.
speaking of fun. This is the bigger project. So we put together a PowerPoint here, and thank you so much, Director, Vice President Jordan, for your help, putting this together. We're gonna walk through.
I was just trying to make this be smaller but still be able to touch this.
If we need another monitor, the people on the left and the agenda on the right.
Are we sharing screens? Should it have like that red box around it?
Oh, that was something I needed. to do.
Looks funny, but maybe.
Mhm.
I- It's a different version, so I'm not sure what to do. To be honest with you.
So are we screen, do we need to, are we not screen sharing, is that?
We're not screen sharing.
Is Zoom still open? Are we still in the meeting? There it is. There's Scott. Alright,
Okay,
thank you. Excellent. All right. So the first slide, let me get to it, is, going over information you've seen before, but it's, more condensed and kind of laid out here in a table of why it makes sense to do the Folger and Dairy Lane projects as opposed, as we've been discussing, as opposed to looking at other properties. And so, we've laid out here, kind of the key factors in that decision, which is the ease and speed of implementation. With, the fact that we already own Dairy Lane and Folger properties, that's certainly very, easy to get going with those properties as opposed to searching for new properties, time to purchase, the scope of any of remodels for another property is likely to be similar. And there's a very limited potential other properties, given the characteristics of our service area that could meet our needs. Property size, the property we have at Dairy Lane we know is large enough for all operations, especially with the upgrade to give us the additional space. Folger, of course, is too small for all operations, but could serve very well as the EOC. And other properties, we know after our search and working with the real estate agents, that it's very difficult to find enough property for all operations within or even close to our service area. Staff cohesiveness is another factor where, the projects we propose will keep staff in one location. But if we were exploring other properties, we would have to split our, small 22-person staff, potentially in different locations as we currently are now. Flood hazard, we know, is a very big driver. And while yes, we've experienced that Dairy Lane is, prone to potential flooding, as well as acknowledge that it can, in the long term, have a shallow groundwater risk because of climate change. With the, scenarios we have, we found that it can be mitigated on site, although there is the potential to temporarily lose access to the site. Folger Drive, fortunately, is not in a flood hazard area and would be expected to be accessible even if Dairy Lane isn't due to the flood. But then again, most of the, alternative commercial and industrial properties are in that same similar flood area. So they're not solving that problem. Seismic issues can be mitigated. And again, we're not gonna find any place around here that doesn't have the same potential seismic issues to address. And then fires, they would be considered. And we're fortunate that our properties are not in fire prone areas. So can I just ask if there's any kind of questions on that general process? Okay. So the next slide goes to, why should we even change the configuration of Dairy Lane? Why not just put it back exactly as it was? And so, looking at Folger Drive and Dairy Lane projects gives us the best balance of risk mitigation to support the continuity of operations. And again, acknowledging the public outreach challenges we might face with Folger. But Dairy Lane in its current configuration, and this was, addressed when the Dairy Lane project first went to the CIP, it needs a seismic retrofit. That project we know we have to do. it also doesn't have adequate office space for the current uses, even, you know, that's why we've got the office trailers. But even with the office trailers, and just looking at, you know, how many lead operators we have, in the old configuration, we didn't have, enough office space for all lead operators, even with shared offices. We only had a couple of private offices, so we had payroll was being done in a cubicle, which isn't ideal given the sensitive, nature that they deal with. So it's really just, you know, the existing space didn't fit all of the needs. And again, this plan is intended to take the district into the next 75 to 100 years. So give more flexibility for any unknowns in the future. It doesn't have key employee focused features like locker rooms or break room. Had some security concerns that were identified. So the original boardroom, configuration had no means of egress behind the dais, which, you know, in these days, we have more concerns about that than,
Yes, one like
Part
that
of time.
secret door.
yeah. So, and the new configuration will, you know, address some of that. Management office has had very limited privacy, very thin walls. And this is, you know, of course, an opportunity for modernization, having a proper SCADA room as our SCADA gets more sophisticated, flood mitigation, of course, bringing electric charging, solar panels, fitness center, other just new modern touches, which are a great benefit. So the next slide speaks to the questions of really what are the problems we're trying to solve? Because there's a couple levels here, right? Here's the problems we need to solve versus just the other benefits that are really good. So the problems we're trying to solve: seismic risk mitigation, inadequate space for current staff and activities, flood mitigation, and inaccessibility of Dairy Lane during the flood events, and supporting continuity of operations through, you know, multiple potential types of emergency situations. And by continuity of operations, we mean, you know, maintaining customer service, being able to respond to main breaks, respond to equipment or SCADA issues, and maintain system integrity and the ability to serve fire needs. So that's really all, a lot of that is access to equipment, tools, vehicles, as well as, you know, redundancy of key things like internet service, to maintain customer operations, or customer service operations too. And then the next slide brings in, you know, what are the added benefits to the Dairy Lane and Boulder Drive projects. That I mentioned, you know, updating and modernizing our facilities, including the public spaces, the staff continuity issue. You know, we've also worked in workforce resiliency benefits by including bunk housing, so that we can have on-call staff have the ability to live farther than a 30-minute radius, or, you know, or if they do, they don't have to make arrangements to be very close to the district. Preparing for the future fleet electrification needs and really thinking through those opportunities. Having a designated emergency operations center available to us, as we learned, there weren't other EOCs that got open to us. There were not other agencies out there supporting our needs. So we have the opportunity to do that for ourselves and to also make it available to other agencies if they find themselves in a situation. So including being able to partner and provide a benefit to the city of Belmont. Also, right now, in our current situation, leasing the space, you know, our rent is about $147,000 a year, so we can choose to do that indefinitely, or we can work to change that. I'll pause and see if some of those were some kind of open questions that we were looking for clarification on. Does that help?
The lease space will not be 147K indefinitely, you know? It'll be
In
going up
today's
too.
dollars. Okay.
In today's dollars. Put a question mark on the fitness center. That's gonna be like available to the employees after work hours, or
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to develop the policy, but typically,
Be
you
very
would,
careful with that policy,
yeah, of course.
Okay.
Um,
because that's, I mean, it's a great thing to have, but I had a lot of very bad experiences with that. We had a lot of injuries, they claimed workers' comp, that were during work and all that kind of stuff. So to the point where, at the fire department, we were going to budget so that everybody will pay the membership fees at a gym for them.
Interesting.
It will be a lot easier than having your own fitness center here.
Mm,
And then when they go to the gym, then, you know, hopefully they will become healthier and stronger, but if they get hurt, you know, they'll be kind of on their own. But, you know, but having, you know, it was difficult to do it for fire department employees, it was very difficult to do it, so we ended up with having a gym in every fire station. But that was something that was always kind of a sore subject. So
So Lucy,
if we have good policies, you know, in place, we'll be good, yeah.
get a gym at every fire station, plus you pay for a gym membership.
No, that was one of the things that we considered, instead of having the gym in the fire station, we'll pay for membership.
But decided instead,
But decided because firefighters work 24 hours, you know, so they cannot leave, even if they go like 3 blocks away and a call comes in, then what do? They run to the station. So but it was something that it was, it was kind of important for us to visit and revisit, because it was a big question mark for us. And that's all I want to say. I mean, obviously, having a fitness center on the premises is convenient, you know, but it's not all good. There are the offsets to it as well.
Yeah, and that's certainly not the motivation for the project, but it's, you know, it's something that we can weigh. And I mean, all of this, right? We're talking about the initial conceptual design. This is what we're starting from. We'll have to refine it all, and that'll come with lots of work, including the policies and the conversations with Andy
Yeah.
Bridget. So
It's good for morale too, you know, so.
it's good for commuting for people who want to come, you know,
Yeah,
kind
come
of
early,
off hours or
work
stay
out,
late.
yeah. Have a shower, ready to go to work.
Any other comments or questions so far? Okay,
So the next, we're gonna dig into the 3 different design schemes that were developed. So at the highest level, scheme 1, the plan is to demo the front office portion of the building and reconstruct a new 2-story office space, as well as to repurpose the less than 2,000 square feet of the shop space, which is about 17% of the current existing shop space. Scheme 2 is to demo that front portion of the building and construct a new 1-story office space, which expands the footprint a little bit, same footprint it would be for scheme 1. But to get that additional space, we're pushing more into the shop. So we're losing about, you know, almost 40% of the shop space under that scenario. And as we'll walk through more, you really have some disjointed layout of key facilities within the site. Scheme 3 has very much the same layout and footprint. The difference being we're not demoing that front building, we're remodeling the existing space, expanding the footprint by about 400 square feet, and again, repurposing a large portion of the shop. So the approach to why we chose these 3 scenarios, scheme 1 was, you know, the ideal planning for the future. We've identified all of, you know, the needs and reasonable wants and how best to fit it on a site. Scheme 2 and 3 were generated largely, you know, as cost analysis assessment. Obviously, we did that, we got the price tag, we said, how can we save money? Where can we save money? How can we fit as much of our needs as we can on the existing site? without having to construct the new two-story part of the building. And so, given the constraints we have, the identified layout has these kind of disjointed satellite spaces within the shop. And the reason they have to be disjointed where they are is because the offices and occupied space need to be on outer walls for windows, light, airflow, things like that. You know, we obviously put less work into refining schemes 2 and 3 than we did the first one. So, you know, just acknowledging that, yeah, there'll need to be some additional kind of refinement of, you know, where things go. But the takeaway is that we're not able to get all of the functional space we were looking for without putting that second floor on the front, you know, putting a new building with a second floor on the front. And it's just not as functional. So I'll walk through more what, you know, that means and the trade-offs in more detail. The next slide is the neat dollhouse view rendering of the first floor for scheme 1 to really kind of show you what that looks like. The shared offices at the bottom right, that's all new footprint, and the SCADA room and workspaces would be all new footprint. The boardroom is, you know, reconfigured in the other orientation. So you do have an exit behind the dais, as well as you know, big doors at the front. And we also talked, yeah, you can see it here, a pretty big door into the conference room as well. So the conference room and boardroom can connect. You have, so you can see the big wall between the locker rooms and bathrooms and the kind of previous location of the bathrooms, or, you know, existing location of the bathrooms. That's everything to the, you know, right of that is the shop space that'll be repurposed. But it's really just limited to that portion of the shop that gets repurposed in this scenario. And then the second floor, you can see has additional offices. The way we have it designed, the boardroom actually has high ceilings that are open, not open to the building, but they're open and kind of grand and modern and light. There's a deck space as well as a kitchen and break room. You know, right, you know, existing Dairy Lane, we never had a break room. People just ate at their offices or, you know, in the shop. And that's it. So this gives us some nice spaces, as well as, you know, places we can have employee appreciation dinners and whatnot, which obviously is just a bonus, but still a nice bonus. So hopefully that gives you a feel of what that can look like. The next slide is the layout for both schemes 2 and 3. So on the left-hand side, you have the main office and public spaces, and that kind of bottom row of offices there, that's the new footprint that would be added on. And then in the shop, you have basically the same footprint as the first scheme with the locker rooms and storage there. And then the bottom of the page along the shop, that's where the manager offices are proposed. And so if you're used to the building, when you drive up to the building and you see that kind of first roll up garage door, that goes away and becomes offices right there. And then the other portion is proposed as the kitchen and break room at the back of the shop as well. And there's also an existing roll-up garage door there that would go away, and that opens up to basically, you know, the sound wall 101. And so you can see, you know, when I mentioned the disjointed layout, you know, you really kind of have 3 separate spaces, and to go between any of those spaces, you travel through the shop space. I have just noted on, you know, the bottom left, if the board were to go to this, you know, there's other considerations to kind of really refine this and think about that we work through, where we could kind of reshuffle the space as it is. But But that's the space that we have to work with. And the next slide, here, and actually the next two slides, and oh, I mentioned you have the newer version, that I left on your desks, just made some changes to these slides. But same as up there. So this is just talking to the benefits of scheme 1 over schemes 2 and 3. So first being that scheme 1 is really designed for optimal workflow and the location of resources, and 2 and 3 are, the goal is minimizing cost and figuring out how we can work within that. You have more flood mitigation options with schemes 1 and 2, where there's a construction of the new building, than with 3. With 3, which of course is the cheapest option, you're using the existing building, so you can't raise the slab as much, you can't build stem walls, you have the walls you have. And so you're just not doing as much to mitigate against future groundwater, shallow groundwater rise, or, flood. Scheme 1 allows for adequate office space to flex if staffing needs change. Schemes 2 and 3 have almost 3,000 square feet of less space. And when you're planning for the unknowns, ideally, you don't want to cram everyone as tight as you can now, not knowing what the future holds. Scheme 1 maintains the presence of managers' offices in the main office space so that they remain, connected with what's going on with staff and customers. It's good to overhear what's going on with staff. The way it's configured right now, if, there was a customer who came in upset, you wouldn't know immediately unless someone, called you and told you, where you just happened to be in the main office. So that's a consideration. And then next slide, and probably, more significantly, so scheme 1 minimizes the amount of shop space lost, from 17% to 38%. And it maximizes options for future potential shop space needs. Right now, we see, shop space needs decreasing. We're doing a lot less, vehicle maintenance and things like that, some fabrication work that we used to do that, now goes out of the house, to third-party companies. But, who knows, 75 years from now, we see left and right, we're losing, the auto shops and, the machinists and all of those things that we have in our own, Belmont, San Carlos industrial areas at some point. I don't know, I can't predict the future, but to me, that there's a lot of value in the flexibility to have the space to do things that the district will need if we have to do it in-house for whatever reason. I mentioned the roll-up doors. Scheme 1 keeps all 3 roll-up door access points to the shop. 2 and 3, you only have 1 roll-up door left. And so what does that mean? It means if we need to start parking more vehicles inside for security concerns, we have a lot less flexibility and access points to do that. Other, large equipment, maneuvering parking vehicles around, indoor charging stations, all of those kinds of needs, we reduce the flexibility there. Scheme 1 reduces the potential hazards of having the shop be, really common circulation space for staff. There's, on any given day, there's any kind of, all kinds of activities in the shop, different maintenance, different equipment, fire hydrants laid out, trip hazards, equipment hazards. But with the schemes 2 and 3, you have that being your primary walkways to get to your kitchen, for example. It, ultimately, even though scheme 3, and 2 are less expensive, a lot of the costs you're spending, or a good portion of it, is actually to run electrical, HVAC, and plumbing to those satellite spaces, because they're so disjointed. There isn't those existing, plumbing, facilities there. So it kind of goes into the value of the money that you are spending. Are you getting the value of the services for the district that you want to for the money? And then, and you know, Scott certainly can speak to this a lot better than I can. But you know, healthy office space fundamentals, you're not really following that when you have those satellite spaces that are really within the shop. There's odors, fire risk, et cetera. Having the, you know, Class A office space so close to those other functions. So, you know, in my opinion, if you're gonna spend the money and try to really plan for that long-term future, then we should be getting the most functionality and flexibility out of the facilities that we do have. So that's why we recommend that scheme one, because it really gives you flexibility as well as function. So I don't know, Scott, if I hit all the points there.
Yeah, I think you did an amazing job of presenting the complexity of trying to resolve, you know, spaces between the corporation yard, inter-shop spaces, and the expectation for, you know, office space and office amenities, and how to support, obviously, recruiting and getting people to join the district and stay for a long time, you know, spend their career there.
Having our 25 and 30-year employees is pretty good. And then the next slide is actually the really detailed, where you want to get into the weeds, table, and here you just have the full table in here. The breakdown between current configuration, scheme 1, 2, and 3, down to, you know, the square footages of each need, so you can kind of see what you get in each one. The color coding, you know, the green is, the feature is going to be located in the main office space, and then blue, it's located within the shop space, and then a couple instances where it's white, that just reflects it's gonna, some will be in the shop and some will be in the office. You have that table on the slide, but you also have the full table in the packet as well. Much harder to read on the slide.
Yeah.
Really hard to read. But you do have in your packet following it.
Where's in the packet?
I didn't, did I miss it?
Oh, here it is.
Yeah, that's
Page
right after the, yeah, right after the PowerPoint.
Oh, I see.
I think it was stapled up with the PowerPoint.
Right, okay. I had a question on the existing building. It looks like the 11 by 17 version has something different going on in the shop space than the PowerPoint.
Sorry, I didn't follow the question.
So this 11 by 17 version, the second page shows the layout of the existing site plan for the building.
Yeah,
Okay, along the back of the shop space, there's something that looks like it may say roll-up gate, so we have another roll-up door back there?
yeah, there's a roll-up door that opens to the sound wall essentially. I mean, there's some space or generators back there, but it's pretty close to the sound
No,
wall.
he's talking about the one that faces the
Oh,
storage.
yes,
Yes, on the
Yeah.
storage side.
Yeah.
that one faces a wall, so that
Yeah.
one we're not even considering, that's not usable to us.
Well, I
But
was
it exists.
more thinking that rather than putting where we're talking about putting the kitchen and break room on the far end of the workshop, wouldn't it be easier to put it on that side? You don't get much of a window, but at least you could get ventilation and air, and it would be it would be coincident with the locker room space, and so you wouldn't necessarily have to be walking through the shop to get there.
I don't remember Tom's full explanation on that, but that is right along the property line, so I don't know if there's if any of the consideration was the setback. Scott, do you recall?
Yeah, well, we were trying to find, obviously, places where we can get daylighting into those spaces, and it's a zero lot line along along where that door is currently, along that portion of the property. So we don't have really much opportunity to put in windows, getting daylighting into that space. So there's certainly some limitations along that zero property line.
Okay, it wasn't clear to me, because I don't see the property line, so it was,
Right.
I was trying to figure out what was there. And
Yeah.
I'm confused, because it looked on the other ones that there were several breaks in it along, but I'm not sure what that was about. In
Well,
the point, it was showing different, something different anyway.
Yeah. Well, there's a very large existing roll-up door there, as was mentioned, and in our diagrams, we basically propose infilling with a new wall in that
Oh,
location.
that's what that's- Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
It's interesting, you look at the historical aerials
Yeah,
and, yeah.
it wasn't. clear to me
Whoever
that was
had
an
this property
infill,
probably
that
had the
was-
adjacent
yeah,
one, and there was a big open
Okay.
space all around, you know. The building. One spot. In the 60s.
This doesn't impact that electronic sign or anything.
No, and that's something we may or may not pursue
Right.
anyways.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
So I'm all for going with a building that's going to be a building that's gonna last us for many, many years, a building that we're gonna be proud of. This is an opportunity that it just happened, we didn't plan for it, but I'm all for making the best out of it. And because no matter how well you design, you almost always outgrow a building in later years. We may not be here to see that happening, but we don't want that to happen to whoever is gonna come after us. However, we are a small agency in comparison, we're a small agency, and the beauty and the productivity of a small agency is when they work cohesively together and when they work almost like a family and they support each other, and you produce more, not because you're big, but because you are lean and you work in cooperation with each other. Now, let us not forget the fact that once you have a two-story building, you are separating. And I cannot tell you how many times I heard the word, oh, because we happen to be on the top floor in a building that I happen to be a project manager of. And we were, oh, you guys up in the ivory castle, the guys on top. You do separate. It's not going to be the same feeling as what we had at 3 Dairy Lane, where everybody was coming and going and everybody kind of, you want to talk to Ryan, oh, he's right there. Oh, and then I want to talk to Kat, she's right there. It's not gonna be like that. Even though it's only a floor, I mean, you separate yourself. The administrative team will separate itself from the operations team. So don't lose sight of that. That's all I'm saying, you know. But from looking at this, you know, it will be a shame for us not to build the best building we would possibly build for the operation that we have. That's it.
Well, I think that having the break room and the kitchen on the second floor, and even though there are fewer offices up there, it provides everyone with an incentive to go upstairs and be up there, sort of the water cooler effect type of thing. So, yeah, they can wander by the manager's office and say hello or whatever type of thing. But because otherwise we're just gonna run out of space. You can't fit everybody on one floor. And otherwise you're going to end up leaving the field crews and the leads in a corner somewhere out in the warehouse type of thing. So it's not the perfect thing, but it's about as good as we're going to get.
I'm having a little hesitations, I guess. Scheme 3, I kind of feel like we can throw that out. and just talk about schemes 2 and 1. But the advantage of scheme 1 over scheme 2 is it gets rid of being disjointed and it saves office space. I suppose there's other things, but that's the primary difference. So is that worth $2.7 million? That's what it kind of comes down to me. And I'm not sure. So that's part of what I'm wrestling with. The locker rooms, fitness rooms, storage, that's the same in all schemes, right?
It is.
Okay.
And again, it's, you know, how much effort did you want to put into refining and making it all perfect in 3 schemes versus get enough information to make a decision and then work out the details.
I mean, one thing I think would be helpful, I don't know how much am I paying for that whole edition, right? Like, all that sort of to me is optional, nice to have. But is it costing me $1 million to add the locker room and we don't have it now. So, you know, and we're giving up shop space. Well, what would we rather have? I mean, we want to have the shop space or we want to have nice to have in scheme 2, for example. And how necessary are the manager offices when we're living within the footprint that we have now here? Like, those are kind of the main questions that I have, because I look at even scheme 2 is where are the opportunities to cut costs? Because I mean, I work in a building that needs a seismic retrofit. It's not going anywhere. No one's about to retrofit it either. And I work for a pretty affluent city. So like, that to me is not motivating. If we're gonna do it, then how are we gonna spend the money wisely to get there? It's kind of my ultimate question. And that's what I'm struggling with. So I still have reservations. I don't disagree with what Louis said either. It'd be nice to take, you know, but this is a lot of money considering our entire CIP program was 20 million. This isn't touching a piece of pipe in the ground or any of the infrastructure. This is just ancillary support infrastructure, if you will. So I'm still sort of trying to wrap my head around how much I'm comfortable spending. I'm also trying to figure out a way to get there. Like, what's the process to get there? You know, this is sort of the same information in a slightly different way that we've seen, and I appreciate that. And we're taking different cracks at it, but I'm not quite seeing a place where I'm not seeing a place where I can vote one way or another to proceed on design right now myself personally. That's kind of where I'm at.
And I'm kind of in the middle of everybody. I met with Kat on this, and so we've looked at this a bunch of different ways, and one of the biggest questions when we were meeting is how do we justify the delta, right? We have to do something to the existing facility, but how do we justify what is the $2.7 million worth? What is that gonna get us? And so that, you know, that sort of still is kind of, I think what I'm hearing is the question that it's a lot of money. And I came on the board, I don't remember so much what Dairy Lane was configured. So it's hard for me to think like, where did everybody sit? But I know that there were people in trailers and I know we lack that space.
Well, I mean, the operators, the guys out in the field, they would just kind of gather in that area where we have the celebrations.
Right.
They didn't have really any office space per se. You know, Michael and those guys, if you walk into the shop and you look to the north wall that faces the storage, there was an office suite that the guys built up there without a permit, you know, and it worked for years. And Tammy finally said, look, you know, we built this without anybody's permit. We didn't have any architect or engineer design it. We just built it. It's stout as hell, but it wasn't permitted. And she goes, we're not gonna occupy space. I can't have, you know, my people working up there not knowing how well that thing was built, you know?
Right.
And so after that, you know, then it says, we gotta get some temporary trailers, you know, because we need to have some office space for people. But we just kind of all been in there, you know, and right now in the morning when the guys show up, there's locker rooms in that area. And it's not unusual that the guys will get down to their skivvies because they're putting on their work pants and they're putting on their shirts. And this morning, you know, I go in there and I'm walking around, I'm just getting my steps in there, walking around, just taking a look at things, this and that. And the guys, like I said, they're getting down to skivvies and it's cold in there. You know, it's cold right now, it's cold, but that's what they have, you know, and they deal with it, you know. So, you know, it is an opportunity, and I don't disagree with the board members. It's an expensive thing. You're right, Matt. We're potentially spending more money on this than we spent on putting pipe in the last 6-7 years. It's a lot of money, but you know, that's why it's good to have the discussion and the debate, you know, to talk about what makes the most sense. And then the people that live in the community that have to pay for it, right? They're paying for it in their rates.
And, you know, I don't have the numbers handy in here, but, you know, one of the prior meetings, we did kind of look at other projects that other water districts are doing. Percival Hills is doing a similar, well, project,
North Coast.
North Coast County Water District as well as North Marin Water District. And, you know, the total costs are similar. I mean, it's what it costs, and, you know, others are facing, you know, the need for modernization, and they didn't even have a flood to deal with, right? But as far as, you know, you know, in my mind, like, you know, none of these, they're plans that we have to work with the conceptual to build on, but none of these are set in stone. And I think there's an opportunity as we go through the design process, even to, you know, engage the board further, in that design process. If that's, you know, the desire, well, you know, look at the very generous locker rooms, right? Does it all need to be locker rooms? Where can we kind of cut and refine those things? You know, the thing that, you know, again, I didn't want to like iterate to death until it was perfect, but right now, like, there's too many bathrooms. We don't need that many bathrooms, and bathrooms are expensive. So we can, you know, certainly look to save.
Some
costs.
value engineering.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, let's face it, none of us have a crystal ball, but we need to somehow think about a building for the future. When we put a piece of pipe, it's gonna stay the same there, all it is gonna just grow old on the ground. This is, we're going to look at the employee of the future, the employee of 10 years from now, and 20 years from now, and 50 years from now. And hopefully that building will be still good for that. It's not easy to imagine that, because like I said earlier, you know, probably none of us will be here 50 years from now, but this is a building that's gonna have to be, and you'll never get another chance to do this.
Right.
Cost is obviously, we'll be remiss if this is not our money, so we have to be very, very careful with that. But somehow we need to come up with a compromise that we're gonna be proud of when it's done, and we're gonna be like, you know, we built something that's gonna last for many, many years to come. And the employees are gonna be happy in it. It's gonna be convenient, it's gonna be comfortable, it's gonna be something that people will look forward to coming in every morning, and, you know, that kind of stuff.
So I guess another question is, if we look, just taking the worst case scenario, if we look to 20 million and bond finance that, what are we talking about in terms of percent impact on rates? Like, what's the percent? Are we talking 10% to afford this? Are we talking 2%? What's the rate implications?
I don't have those numbers yet. We have the rate model, and that's next on my to-do list to get those numbers to the finance committee.
Yeah.
In a couple of weeks. We got the finance committee on rates, so.
But the focus is gonna be on Folger, right? On the
The
Folger
focus-
Drive. I mean, this is good, but
For, focusing on, in what respect?
for,
For rates,
no,
for,
Moving forward,
for
construction.
moving forward construction.
Our schedule is to try and do Folger.
Folger.
oh, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I'm sorry, I just wasn't understanding the question, yeah, the phasing, they get Folger done as quickly
Because
as we
this
can.
looks like we're gonna have, you know, quite a bit of discussions based on what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You know, where's everybody's at, you know? But we should not lose sight where that Folger is gonna be our main target,
Yes,
so that we can hopefully get out of here and go to Folger. At least will be in
Yeah.
our spot.
yeah, in terms of phasing, and if, we don't have it in here, but the, you know, the overlapping schedule we're envisioning, if we moved ahead with Dairyland would be to start, the Dairyland design several months down the line after we got the Folger design done and, so that it would, when Folger was done, we could move into that and
Correct.
have, Dairyland as vacant as possible for construction. So, but yeah, the emphasis is getting Folger done.
We had a schedule for Folger, but it doesn't show how.
Yeah, the
quickly
last
that
meeting,
goes.
I feel like you probably include all the packets from all the last meetings in these, so we have
Yeah.
all the information building, but
Any other questions or comments? Thoughts?
Yeah, President Zuka, you said that the seismic issue where you work isn't that big a deal.
Well, I mean, I guess the building's probably gonna fall on me when there's a next earthquake, but no one's doing anything about it.
That's not gonna hold it up either, just because nobody's doing it.
I'm just saying, we're not, no one's exactly rushing around trying to.
Just pray that doesn't happen.
It's not clear to me if we went with alternative three,
Three.
whether or not we could get away without doing a major seismic, and that means we're gonna tear apart the structure of the building and.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's almost going to be a shell.
Yeah.
So,
the existing, seismic assessment is on the existing building, so
right,
even scheme three includes that seismic upgrade.
right. So,
And it's mostly in the shop.
that's why it's 10 million or 12 million just for that one.
Yeah, yeah, and then there's the flooding risk with that one too. It would be a shame to go through all this and then start getting groundwater flooding 5-10 years from now in that building.
Right,
I'm wondering if maybe next steps is look at both schemes 1 and 2 and seeing if the cost can be dropped on those two.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking too, is that maybe because I'm still struggling with the affordability of this and the costs and the rates, and I'm not gonna be able to make a decision personally until I know what kind of rate increases is gonna result.
Yeah.
So until we can sort of back in, this 5% to be able to bond finance 20 million or 10, I don't know that I have enough information to answer the question. The other thing is, I agree with everything that's stated in all of these about the pros and the cons and this and that and the other. At the end of the day, how much is the locker room costing? How much is the fitness center costing? How much is those kinds of things? How many offices do I need? What's and again, like we're pushing these, I'm just gonna call them optional because I can't think of a better word for them right now. These optional elements, and we're taking shop space with it. So the design is intentionally trading off. So then why do I care if I'm losing shop space? Because by designing it this way, I'm basically saying I can make this work. So that's why I can't get myself to scheme 1. Yeah, I get more shop space, but what's the extra shop space worth to me when I go between 17 and 38%? I don't know what that actually means. It's just a number. Yeah, it's less. So what? What's the actual impact of having less shop space? Does that mean I can't do work? Does that mean the decision right now is so intangible that I can't get myself to scenario 1, to scheme 1. I can barely get myself to scheme 2, and it's only because of, why go anything and have it not get some incremental, out of this. But that's kind of what I'm struggling with, is like, how do we get there? It might be that we cut Noel and Tam loose to say, okay, we need to slice this another way. We need to maybe have some longer workshops where we're just going through item by item, and I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to also figure out what the mechanism for getting us there is. Because I don't know that just another conversation at a board meeting is gonna get us there. So maybe it's getting them a design services contract to come up with, between scenario 1 and scenario 2, iterate on cost. Like figure out how to make a cheap as possible this versus I don't know. I'm just sort of speculating, options or tossing ideas out here. And then we can wrap our heads around. Again, if it's $1 million gym, I'm probably not voting for a gym. I just don't know right now.
Well, I mean, okay, so I understand needing all the information to decide between 1 and 2 so that we have something to run with. I like the idea of additional, if we want to just do additional design work on both scenarios. But I mean, the other, whether you choose one or two, what I was envisioning, there still is that further design process where we really look closely at, as you're saying, what is the locker room cost? Locker room half the size, training room probably is the first to go. I mean, it's nice if it fits in the scheme, it doesn't add a lot of value, but, you know, but that's a lot more time and, just, well, work beyond the scope that we currently have.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I can't vote on it right now, so we
Yeah.
have to get there somehow.
Yeah.
Right? I at least have my 1/5 opinion is I don't have enough information without understanding the rate implications and how we can make this cheaper. So maybe it's that we just need to, if we're all in agreement that maybe we're not interested in scheme 3, we need to, yes, do another contract with them to further refine something between schemes 1 and 2, so that we can make these incremental decisions about like, you know, between the two costs of 16 point, I mean, even between 14.4 and 16.6. All right, you know, what are the things that on scheme 2 can we make cheaper? You know, how can I whittle down scheme 2? How can I whittle down scheme 1? And then we can start saying, is that worth it or not? Now, it's a little bit of a menu. And I know how architects tend to cost these things by trade. So I don't need it by trade, I need it by area. I need it by feature. Because I can't, that's what I need to make a decision on.
What do you mean by trade?
Like you'll do electrical and HVAC, by trade, right? So you do it that way. Now, what I need to know is how much is the gym gonna cost me? You know, like what's the value of the gym in this process? What's the actual operational impact of losing the shop? Like when I go from 17 to 38%,
It just depends
I don't
on
know what
what,
that
yeah, it
means.
depends on what you're losing. I'm just thinking like, you know, if we were to put the break room, the kitchen in the back, well, I mean, if you go look at the shop, there's that hoist mechanism, right?
Mhm.
That lift, and it goes all the way back. Does
Mm-hmm.
that need to go all the way back? I know that the guys use it near the front towards the area where they gather, you know, because it's just a nice space there and it's closer to getting out of the shop. And they put things together before they take it out in the field. So there is use for that shop. So you're right, you know, what kind of implications is it gonna have if we take the back part of that shop area and put in the break room and kitchen?
and but let me be clear. I have absolutely zero interest in micro designing this thing as a board, me personally, right? But I have to have enough information to make a decision.
Mhm.
And to say, yeah, I'm comfortable and can defend $20 million, right? And that's the part that I don't think I'm there yet. You know, I think the only way we're gonna get there is eventually just to keep going. I don't know that I have anything else, and to sort of say, okay, well, let's start honing in on somewhere between, how can we take scheme 2? What are the actual trade-offs of what scheme 1, what can we make cheaper, better, faster, or whatever? And then just go. And then eventually we'll have the rate model done. We'll know $20 million costs us X% in rates. And then I can make a decision about, okay, what does that actually mean? Because again, we're bond financing this over 30 years probably, or something. Maybe we get some free money from the state, who knows? And maybe it's not 20 million, maybe it's 15 million. But I'm 1 of 5, so, you know, that's just my personal, like, I just don't have enough, again, I don't disagree with anything. I understand all the schemes and everything else in front of me. But if I was at work right now, I couldn't advocate really one for the other. Because I don't know what the shop costs, for example, you know, and I don't really know how much the other features that we're paying for cost.
let me ask kind of in the area of moving forward, how much of that do you think is really kind of full board workshops, or does it make sense at this point to, you know, have like a real estate committee look at it? If we want to get into those kinds of weeds.
I would use different words because I don't think we're in the weeds.
Yeah.
I think asking for information necessary to make a vote is not weed. I'm agnostic. I don't know. I have an opinion. I mean, I don't know that I have, which way, you know, whatever the preference is. It's such a big thing. I think we all need to be comfortable with it. So, you know, I'm not sure how comfortable everybody would be with two board members coming back and saying, yep, scheme 1, and we move forward.
But Kat, in reality, you know, since we have the money allocated or the cost for each scheme, how difficult is it to get to the cost of the particular areas? It cannot be that hard.
Well, I mean, Matt is right in the detailed cost table we have, and certainly Scott, feel free to chime in. It is broken out electric for the whole cost, but a lot of that is based, I'm pretty sure, on square footages.
Right. Yeah, you can probably
Right.
just portion it, rough it out.
Yeah.
Can we back that out?
No, I think that, and we certainly have done that. I mean, building back out against the type of space we're building based on the estimate numbers we have. Yeah, it takes
Yeah.
some time, but we definitely do it, and it helps you understand and prioritize the programmatic elements you want. And we can also present ways to reduce square footage, or reduce, Kat mentioned reduce number of plumbing fixtures or things like that, just to help tighten the project overall, including understanding probably better about what's happening, for equipment in the courtyard and within the shop space itself. And then also, I mean, Kat just really not lumping together, but isolating the big things, right? Isolating all the structural seismic work that has to be done for the existing building versus the, either the new or renovated in scheme 3, and just showing you sort of the more bulk numbers for the bigger efforts to make sure that the building is safe and is going to last a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
So
even on scheme 3, if you sat down and said, hey, it's a $12 million project and you've got $2 million of TI buzzing to make it better, okay, that gives me a sense of like, just to go in and touch the building, I gotta go spend $12 million. And then I've got 2 million is discretionary. Okay, now I know, right?
Yes,
And then I can sort of talk about the 2 million discretionary. Then what's discretionary going to 16 and 19, for example, $1 million, and the schemes 3 and 2, or sorry, 1 and 2.
So something, similar to this table, but focused on costs.
Yeah, focused on cost. I mean, I think this tells us what's changed, and if you just added, for example, I mean, I don't know that you need it by all these line items, but for example, I'm just looking at the quiet room, okay, do I need a quiet room? Or is this lumped in together? And these are the necessary changes, right? It's sort of, I sort of put it in the necessary and then optional, right?
Sure.
And in order of preference, and this is what we're paying incrementally, and it's like, oh, strike that. Oh, well, you can't strike that without having this. I think we have to have that conversation about what can I delete, what can we take out? And then have sort of a put back in based upon the value judgment of what it provides to the district.
Yeah, and then also just to kind of frame it, even if you're kind of striking line items, then you still have to look at the envelope of the project, because that's, you could take some of that square footage out, but it's not gonna change.
It's
the
not gonna
overall.
change anything, then maybe add it back in, but or if I take out, I'm just picking on this 70 square feet, right? But quiet room, okay, I take the quiet room out, I get 70 square feet of additional shop space, and you're like, okay. It doesn't do me anything, right? And maybe like you said, there's no net benefit, so maybe we put it back in. Or on one of these things, I'm just looking at this, again, you sort of take out, there's 3 offices in scheme 3 in the shop. And I don't know how necessary they are. Let's just for, grin say that they're not. Well, now I'm at maybe a 20% reduction or I have more shop space.
Or move the kitchen there.
Or move the kitchen there. Yeah, do I really need those managers in the bathroom space? Or can I reconfigure, or do I really need, again, the 2 things that are taking up the shop to me seem to be optional. Because the other one is the kitchen staff break room. Like they're not core to the operations of offices and shop. We can also use the board meeting, but we always have the training room. Like, how are we sharing space instead of, I don't see it personally, other than maybe move the kitchen there and then we have the boardroom as a training room.
Yeah, I think I said, training room's the first thing to go.
Yeah.
We do have, but-
And I personally, I don't know about the other board, I don't need an emergency exit. There's not enough public here for me to need an emergency exit.
No secret doors?
No secret doors.
I think that might be the bulletproof glass, I think is now a requirement.
Is it really?
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Wow.
They They haven't.
But the staff doesn't get to sit behind bulletproof glass, just the elected official.
They're the ones that are gonna get
This
shot.
allows you to escape through the underground door.
Yeah, yeah.
Will be the.
The scuttle.
Front line.
Well, and the dais will be bulletproof
Under the
too.
desk. Under the desk.
But
So, I don't know if that helps. I know it's going back and coming back, but I'm also sort of feeling like maybe the next step is, and I'm happy to sit down with you guys too and talk about it, cause is to schedule a workshop, I don't know, maybe on a Saturday or whatever, when we all have some time and just start off, come in, have some breakfast, plan on spending a Saturday morning in here. Once we kind of get it restructured around the, how do we make this a menu, as close as we can to a menu, and then start being able to whittle back and forth between, you know, like Brenna, what shop space do you want out there? When you talk about losing 38% of it, what does that actually mean? All right, so, you know, what would you want back? Like, what are we giving up to get? And then, cause I don't know that I have a sense, and I don't know how it's reflected in here. And then there's also what I call, again, these optional elements to this that, I'm not sure we've struck the right balance but I want to go forward, obviously. I mean, that's the problem. We gotta go forward. We gotta do something. We can't stay here forever. So how do we get there?
And Brenda, how did the staff feel about, the staff looked at it?
Oh, yeah.
Your employees and all that? What kind of comment?
they were really positive. They like seen the renderings. I mean, we took their input and their features and, the things that are quote unquote optional. They have a lot of very, positive feelings about that, obviously. We have had the conversation of, obviously, it's the board decision and there's cost, and it's a big factor, it's public funds, so, this is what we're working with. And this is the initial conceptual.
But they were positive, leaning towards scheme 2, scheme 1.
Scheme 1, I mean, they want the space, they want the shop, they want, the flexibility.
Everything.
Yeah, you look at, our staff is amazing and they really don't complain like, I can imagine certain situations, but they are on top of each other right now.
Yeah.
They really are.
I mean, the locker room makes absolute sense to me, right? And then you get into the break room and the kitchen, the gym, all those kinds of things. Like, I think that's just the conversation of how much we're spending on all of that, what are we giving up?
Yeah, I mean, we could have a smaller break room, but having 0 break room really.
Yeah, whichever way you slice it, and, the cost is a shock.
Yeah.
When I saw the cost, I go, oh, it's a lot of money.
It is.
So, but obviously we want everything, yeah, of
I
course.
mean,
They want everything, we want everything, but we don't wanna,
we don't
we
want
wanna
to
spend the money for it.
Yeah,
Well, in addition to President Zuka's idea of a menu for each of the schemes, would it make sense for there to be a scheme 1.1, which would be staff's recommendation of how to do scheme 1, but cheaper? So that'd be your selection from the menu.
Not cheap,
There's
less expensive.
less expensive.
Yeah.
And same
Well,
thing.
We're not gonna
Well,
go
and I-
cheap.
you know,
Come on.
We
I think
won't get the gold faucets? Oh, no.
I think I said it before, but maybe not as clearly, like, in my mind, that is what this is, whatever you tell us to go ahead. We're gonna look for ways to appropriately cut the cost without really compromising, like, take your feedback. Fewer bathrooms, regardless, if you were gonna make the decision today to go ahead, like, that's, that's what we, we wanna
Yeah,
use
but
the
you
money
wanted
wisely.
you thought you might be ready to choose scheme 1 and then do that. And we're not.
Yeah,
Not
no, I
ready
get
for that.
I get that,
So.
regardless of the decision, it'll be sharpening our pencils and making sure.
Now, I wanna
that
make sure
whatever we do is-
my suggestion does not.
No, I
There's
think
no
that,
problem with that.
absolutely not at all. I mean, I think that the other thing I would look at here is, there is an economy of scale, but is there an opportunity for phasing? In other words, do we have to do all of it right now, or could we do some of it 10 years from now? Where we look at it and go, well, here's the long-term solution. We're gonna keep the shop as is, and we're gonna go invest. Like, can we sit down and do the 2-story building and, we're just gonna put the shop stuff as a future cost? I'm making that up. I don't know what that even means. But I think they're kind of 2 separate structures. Tear one down, build the other one up, and we'll come back and now we're gonna have a remote cost and it's gonna be more costly overall. There's also the time value of money. It gets more expensive over time. But, we're spending less money today. And that could be a compromise to get us from scheme two
You
to
still have to
scheme one.
seismically upgrade
You
that.
still have that's the base, yeah, I get
Yeah.
that. But like, for example, I'm just looking at the interior stuff. You know, I've got offices and a break room and a, kitchen, all that kind of thing. I don't have it today. Things I don't have today, can I build into some future plan? But I just know that I want to accommodate it, right? I don't know. It would
No, I
just
think-
help in this.
Yeah.
project.
I think there's ways to explore that. And in fact, that's exactly what North Coast County landed on. We did very minimal work on the shop besides seismically improving it in lighting, and then they're building a new 2-story, admin board building, right? So they definitely, that's the tactic that they arrived at as, ultimately through the design process for that project. So it's not, I think that's a very common thing to look at as a strategy to help plan for the budget and for sort of the future work to build out as quickly as you can build out new construction to host all of the all district personnel as much as you can, and then strategize and phase for future renovation of other elements, either in the courtyard or in the shop building.
Or, we'll cut the crews back loose and do some unpermitted stuff, So that- Anyway, is that
All right.
sufficient
So
feedback?
working on magic.
All right.
And I'm happy to, like I said, I'm happy to meet and go through it and talk about it. 'Cause I think hopefully, is everybody on the same page? I mean, I don't want to be I am, I don't want to be the only stick in the mud. I am a stick in the mud.
You said it.
I know I did. I'm self-aware, first step.
No,
All right.
I think the price tag will shock all 5 of us.
Yeah.
Me
So-
too.
So
I was
then
joking
you
that,
start from that, now when you start simmering down, you gotta, okay, now,
Yeah.
how do we do it?
Right.
Do we like the Cadillac? Of course.
Yeah, we all love the
yeah,
Cadillac.
so.
Because we all agree, I think, with the concept, it's just like, how do we then justify 16 to 20, and all of that?
Especially, especially when we're, like you said, we're dealing with somebody else's money.
Okay,
If I could just restate the direction to make sure I'm understanding. So it's to work with Nolan Tam, there'll be additional scope, because they're at their scope,
Yep.
to further refine schemes 1 and 2 with the detailed cost analysis.
yeah, and with two focus, sort of a menu by feature and maybe a phasing plan, looking at it different ways.
Yeah.
So that we can come
Sure.
up with maybe, if we did I'm gonna make this up, if we did a 3-phase project, what would the investment in phase 1 be versus phase 2 and 3? Versus if we did it all, but here's the menu of things and here's the incremental features, how do you create that matrix, because we might be able to bite off, I'm tossing some, a $10 million project that gets us to this far, knowing that we've got another $10 million project to do at some point in the future, or maybe it's a $15 million investment into scheme 1, but deferring 5 million of it to a future date or something like that.
Mhm.
That is the rate implications.
And the
which
rate
is
implications,
Going
absolutely.
through its own process, but
And even if it's a rough, it doesn't have to be an actual model rate. It can be like, hey, if I got $20 million, I need X number of, it's X percent per $1 million of cost, bond finance, right? I mean, it can be something as simple as that. Like, I know that for each of the 3 utilities that I run, sort of off the top of my head is wastewater is $250,000 per percent. So anything I add on, every $250,000 per year is over 1% on the rates.
yeah, and that is literally sitting in my email. I just haven't had the time to sit and go through, but it's coming next up for the
Cool.
finance committee, so we got that.
Awesome. Thank you. That was all of it. That was all for 8C. 8D, possible update?
All right, so we had a meeting last Thursday, and we welcomed 2 new members. Darren Duncan from Cal Water and Richard Mellinger from the city of Sunnyvale. So Bosco submitted a letter to the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission on the 10-year capital improvement plan, which was submitted to the commission prior to the plan's adoption in February. So the project adoption included the necessary improvement to the water delivery and treatment facilities, such as the moccasin vent stocks, the replacement project, and the Sinol Valley Water Plant improvement. These projects are critical, but well, we know because the ensuring the Hatch-Hatchie system that we call, which is called the regional water system, continues to provide the reliable water supply for all the Bosco customers. We talked a little bit about the court case of the State Water Board issue and its decision. We all heard the outcome of that. So the court case went in favor of the State Water Board. And while the ruling is unfortunate, it is important to recognize that Bosco's concern, so it went against Bosco. Bosco's concern that were expressed to the court are now a part of the official record for further review and consideration with the increased risk to the water supply from the regional water system. The one thing that the court, it's not they didn't hear, but they didn't put a lot of attention was, you know, the domestic water supply and the increased housing. It looks like they just ignored that completely, which is very unfortunate. And anyway, but the court ruled. Then we had the presentation of the from this SFPUC on the water supply condition, which Brenna will talk about, so I don't need to go over that. And then Steve Ritchie reported on the SFPUC adopted budget and the 10-year capital improvement project. And the budget at 10-year will be a component of the citywide budget submitted by the mayor for the San Francisco Board of Supervisor consideration in July of this year. The 10-year CIP is comprised of 3 10-year programs for local water, regional water, and the Hatch-Hatchie water. Let's see, what else did we have? We had the consent calendar, just not much. And then Nicole Sarkula presented the preliminary fiscal year 24-25 work plan, the results to be achieved, and the operating budget to the board for its feedback and discussion. Comments provided will be reflected in the proposed work plan, results to be achieved, and operating budget that will be presented to the board policy committee for discussion on April 10. Then we had a long discussion on this state board case, and it was not said yet, but we're gonna review it. It's about a 96-page document that the court came up with, or no, 996-page document. So it's being reviewed, and probably Bosco will consider and SFPUC will consider an appeal. And if that were to happen, then the issue of the housing element will probably be discussed a little bit more in detail. And for the water managers, you want to talk about tier 2?
Tier 2 is ongoing. Next meeting, I'm losing track. I don't know if the 19th or the 20th meeting. The next one is on Monday. We're getting closer from to a decision point, which means people are getting further apart. The ones that are at least on the various kind of end case scenarios. We are fortunate in some ways that we are so typical in middle. I think there's a reason you named us Mid-Pen, right? We're very much in the middle. So we've pushed on the things that matter to us, as well as a lot of other agencies that are in the same situation. So I think we've come to a good compromise on the things that did swing us one direction or another. So now the meetings are just getting more exciting. So yeah, not a lot of specifics that we can really talk about. It's not much has been decided. Also getting into the weeds on the, word choices of what we're calling various terms in the equation and all of that, so. Another thing that was discussed is, SFPUC just did a cost study to develop, fixed costs for meters, and the reason behind it is there's a couple new meters they're gonna bring into the system that didn't have any costs. But the whole cost study changes some of the cost allocation kind of framework. The actual dollar values are very small, but there's obvious concerns about the implications. So we've requested that they on the process. And we've supported, Mid-Peninsula has supported that in a comment letter to SFPUC, but they will slow down the process, involve Bosca a lot and us agencies a lot more closely so that we can fully understand what those implications are, what precedent it's setting, et cetera. So that's where we are. We'll see how SFPUC responds to that. Those are the big things. Strategy 2045. No, it's 2050. They changed it to 2050 now.
Yeah.
On
Alternative water supply.
the meter charge thing, Palo Alto's taking a pretty aggressive stance against. I'm sure you've heard. So it's a slippery slope getting us away from proportional share of costs. So
At least from the Boston standpoint, our letter is very similar, is that let's just slow the process down.
Yeah.
We acknowledge we gotta fill in a couple of values for your new meters, but beyond that, let's just take the time to actually work through it collaboratively. And it's interesting because Boston is actually using Dan of IGS Services and Bergman to do the analysis and propose alternative costs and all of that. So he's involved, which is good. He was at the last WMR meeting. Yeah, so strategy 50, which they're working on the scope and getting feedback from us on refining the scope of that project as well. Those are the main things that we talked about.
Yeah.
Certainly spent a lot of time on the
And,
SFPUC issue.
Wholesale water rate?
Haven't heard any different
Different,
numbers.
yeah, no different numbers, yeah.
6.5, right?
Yes.
So as of,
We're working with.
as of February 15th, wholesale water rate 6.5.
Yeah, it has not changed from there as far as they've told us. Our Prop 218 notice went out, but that has the upper bound that they had given us of 13.1%.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool. Anything else for on that? No?
No.
Good.
You covered it, yeah.
Right.
you good? Is that it?
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
On to item 8E, California report.
Go to page 76, Monique, that first, just the drought map. Just to kind of point out that drought map that, if you take a look at the table on the right-hand side, you'll see some columns and see some rows, and you take a look at the top row, it says current state of California. So, 95% of California's land area isn't under any drought conditions, but about a little 4.5% is just abnormally dry. If you go down to the bottom row, it says 1 year ago, take a look at that. 73% of California was abnormally dry. Just all the water that we received last year hadn't quite gone into the ground and kind of taken the drought conditions away. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And so again, looking at those two rows, the current row at the top and 1 year ago, you can see that 1 year ago, there were still some areas of California, 19% of the area was under severe drought conditions still after all the rain and stuff that we had last year. This year, it's still lingering, it hasn't hit. So that's a good sign for all us right now. On the next page, just the reservoir status conditions. Pretty much all of the reservoirs, major reservoirs in the state are above the historic level for the time of the year. The only one that's really not is the San Luis Reservoir, but it's close. It's 86% historical. So that's a good sign too, that there's water stored in the reservoirs getting ready for the summer when water use starts going up. Not much to show in the national precipitation forecast in the SFPC. I just like to throw that in there because I think it's a neat graphic, and it's just, to me, it's maybe kind of seeing if what they forecasted kind of played out. On the next page, page 79, just looking at precipitation data, a couple things I'll just point out there. If you look at the top row, San Francisco downtown, the rainfall from July 1 through March 5th showed 21.5 inches. Go to the far right-hand side, last year on around March 7th, we had 26 inches, so about 5 inches more rain last year downtown San Francisco. And then comparing that with, now you get to the middle of the page, see Fresno, the same period of time, July 1, 23 to March 5th, they had a little over 7 inches of rain. Last year, that same time frame, they had double the rain, 14 inches of rain. Just amazing how much a year makes, and then where the rain falls, right? So then you look at the last 4 or 5 cities, Santa Barbara, LAX airport, downtown LA, San Diego, and Palm Springs. You take a look at the rainfall numbers from July 1 to March 5th, you know, just here recent March 5th. Remember that tropical storm Hillary, and I pointed out a few times, you know, they just really got slammed with a lot of water. And so you take a look at Palm Springs, you know, they've had over 6 inches of rain, you know, over that same period of time. Compared to last year, we had all that rain that fell and so on. They only had 3.5 inches of rainfall in the Palm Springs area. So they just really got inundated with a lot of water from that tropical storm Hillary, and it shows up, you know, from Santa Barbara all the way through. So their water rainfall is just a lot higher than most of the other state, and I think it's still, you know, lingering effects from what happened just that one period of time last fall. The next page is the Hetch Hetchy precipitation. And Steve Ritchie's graph, and you can see that, you know, the red line, the bright red line, that's the precipitation for this year. The black line is a 30-year median. And so you can see that so far we're still below 30-year median, but we're well ahead of 2015, which was the last really dry year from a rainfall standpoint. But then, of course, compared to last year, the green dotted line, we're well below the green dotted line in precipitation. Just a difference here makes. The next page, 81, the upcountry precipitation. Year to date, 23.5 inches. The average annual is over 36.5 inches. So we're at about 64% of the average annual precipitation up in the upcountry stations that SFPC monitors. And you can see the last couple of months, it's exceeded the average March. That's not full March there, just first few days of March. So it doesn't reflect the entire March. The Bay Area precipitation index, actually, the year-to-date total a little over 23 inches, and the average annual is just a little under 23 inches. So actually, right now at this point in time, we're a little bit above the average annual we get. We still have a few months left to rain, but of course, March, April, and May, there's just typically not a lot of rain in the Bay Area. The upcountry snowpack finally caught up with the 30-year median. The bright red is showing that the snowpack there. I suspect that, and I think they'll tell you that we're probably going to hit the 100% snowpack when we see the information for March, if not April for sure. But again, if you look to the dotted green line, you know, you can see that we hit the 100% peak last year in January. This year, we're not quite there yet. Maybe you might get there in March, maybe April. Water storage conditions throughout the system, sitting really good. Overall, the entire regional water system is at 93% capacity. Compared to last year at the same time, we're at 88% capacity. And then the year before in 2022, 74%. So sitting pretty good. The Hetch Hetchy system came online, right? They've been working on the tunnel system since the early part of December, and they turned things back on in the first part of March. So they're back in. We're getting water from Hetch Hetchy. We've been getting water from the regional, you know, reservoirs and the water treatment plants the last 3 months or so. That's why maybe some of the levels are down a little bit, but still really good water storage numbers. The next page about deliveries in the regional water system. When I got this slide, you know, it was 150 million gallons a day was the delivery for the entire regional system, kind of tracking right along with last year at the same period of time. And it's interesting, you take a look at 2015, you know, we didn't know the drought was going to hit us really bad in 2015. So actually water use is pretty good, the total deliveries. And then finally, when, you know, we started catching wind and we were telling all of our customers that they really took a drop in the month of April in 2015. But even now we're well below, you know, what water deliveries were back in 2015. I think, again, people just kind of gotten used to reducing their water use. And again, it's been wet enough where they just haven't turned the water on outside. As soon as people start turning the water on outside, the water deliveries start going up, and that's just typical in California. The next page is our water use. And so in February, we purchased a little over 1% more water than we did February 2023. Don't have the GPCD. That was something Brandon was calculating. So we get a person with Cat says starting next week. So hopefully next month, we'll start sharing that GPCD residential with everybody here. That's interesting to see. And then the last one is just a cumulative line. This one I took out, and you notice too, the SFPUC number, because that was just a target number in 2022, and we're still dealing with drought. So I'm just gonna have a comparison of what we actually are taking compared to what our 5-year average is. The 5-year average is that blue line, and then the green line is gonna be what actually happens in the system. Just kind of keep a running total on that. So that's the water supply. Looks pretty good, and it's usually in April, right, when the state and the feds tell everybody what their water supplies are gonna be made available to them, from the big canals in the Central Valley, and the farmers and the cities and stuff to get water, just kind of racing for what they're gonna hear. Still don't think anybody's gonna get 100% supply, but it should be better than, what has been in the past, where some years they haven't gotten any water at all, and farmers, and they just start pumping groundwater. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Good. Any questions? Moving on, item 9A1, gentlemen.
All right, a lot of things going on. Probably the most fun was the celebration lunch for Misty's 20th anniversary, and there's a couple photos in there. Did a big seafood boil. Staff all got together and did it. We had, crab, shrimp, clams, corn, and potatoes. It was a lot of fun. Director Wheeler was able to join us and got to crack crab right there at the shop. We have the employee appreciation dinner scheduled for May 10th. Hopefully you've all gotten that invite. We're gonna try out Porterhouse in San Mateo. So that'll be really fun. We just developed a website privacy policy. So what happened is the service that we use that actually sends the text messages when we have our customer connect messages, they said, oh, you don't have a privacy policy, set up on your website. You're not in compliance with the law. We can't do the service anymore. Well, for, detailed reasons Catherine can go into, we don't actually have to have one. We're not out of compliance, but it's not a bad thing to have. It's just good, transparent information. And it's easier to put one up there than it is to convince, the company Twilio that we don't need one and they can go ahead and get us the service. So we went and put that together. It's actually an administrative procedure. It just documents the things that we're already doing. And I included that in the packet if you want the detail, but it's just, what types of information do we collect on our website and what do we do with it? Which is pretty minimal one, just for very specific district purposes. But thank you so much for helping us out developing that. And John Davidson for also doing a lot of work to get us there so we can get our text messages back and going. Also, Aqua reached out to members asking us to join their coalition to support AB 2257, which is related to defending against Prop 218 lawsuits. And so we did, sign on to their letter. And I have, a detailed fact sheet on that also attached to my report. It's, there's a number of these different, fights for limiting your ability to raise and apply rates and fees, and this is, part of the fight against it.
Is this the way it's going to look on the website?
That is, I think I just PDF'd it from the website.
Is there a reason why it has to be so faded looking?
The design of our website?
I find it hard to read.
Do you find it hard to read on the website?
Yes,
Okay.
just the fact that it seems to be a 25% level on top of white, and it's just annoying.
Well, that's good, because that's good feedback. I haven't heard.
Guess all of us should go and
Otherwise-
look at the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, let us know, and if it's hard to read, then that's
Yeah.
good reason to.
Well, it depends on what monitor you're using. If you've got a huge monitor and you're sitting only 18 inches away, yeah, you can read it, but
Sounds like my day.
yeah. But if you're just sort of looking on your tablet or something and it's really, well, I can't read that. You have to keep blowing it up to see it.
I feel like I have to do that on all websites.
Yes, it's the new style. I just don't like it.
Modern. Consistent with a lot of things. Prop 218 card, actually, there's a little bit of an error. It hasn't gone out yet. It's gonna go out, I think, Friday. But, you know, it's, so you'll see it in your mailbox probably next week. The rate study, working on that, mentioned that fiscal year budget is next, so we're starting that. Draft financial management plan, there's a draft circulated to a number of folks, number of professionals. So that's going to the finance committee, on the 2nd, and we're expecting it'll come to the full board either in April or May, depending on feedback from the finance committee. We received the draft financial audit on Monday. So we're working on wrapping that up. That's also going to the finance committee soon. I sent out a doodle poll to schedule it, and sorry, I thought I was in Switzerland, or at least Doodle thought I was in Switzerland, so the times came out a little bit crazy.
2 o'clock in the morning, I go like.
Is Felix up at 2 o'clock in the morning? You're up?
No, but I am. No, yeah, I don't know why. I created the account with the district website and it defaulted to Zurich. Thank you, helpful.
I thought we were gonna go to Switzerland, I'm doing this, all right.
The new Dairy Lane office.
Already.
Oh, nothing's ever easy and straightforward. Dairy Lane folder, we've talked about a lot. Form 700s due Monday. If you haven't done it, please do that. ASM recruitment, we got, or, you know, the recruiter got over 60 applications. So took them a little while to weed through all of that, and they presented to us, it was 13 or 14 kind of top candidates, and we've whittled that down to a handful. We're planning on interviewing in 2 weeks. So that's moving along.
How many? 300.
5.
Five.
Yeah. So fingers are crossed. But I'm excited that we do have a good number of candidates to look at and consider. So, PCG management support is in here, and that was asked, you know, see what, specifically on the management side, they're helping us with, financial management plan is the big one right now, and soon we're just starting, work with the records retention policy. And we haven't moved very far on it, but soon after it'll be focusing on the personnel manual updates as well. Other as needed questions. Those are the main ones. There's a San Mateo County CSDA meeting coming up April 16th. So I sent the invite to those, you know, Director Wheeler and Director Vela, who are kind of our CSDA designates. So if you can attend, that would be great. Zoom or in person, happening at Where's like Granada. Oh, Granada, right. I plan to attend. Went to the CalGov HR conference, and in a few weeks here, Vice President Jordan and I will be going to the Chamber San Mateo progress seminar up in Sonoma, yeah. Any questions about anything else in there?
So, speaking of modern, I like the way you guys staple.
On the right.
this. But do we have to do it on the right? Can't you do it on the left, please?
It might have been a mistake.
Just-
Didn't want to reprint.
She was in
it.
Zurich at the time.
That's how
way
they
they
do
do
it.
it.
That's how they do
No,
it.
it looks like China, because we're
Flip it
reading
over,
this way.
Flip it over and read backwards.
Yeah.
How hard is that?
There you go.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I could do it upside down, inside out.
I was still in favor, but not reprinting.
Operations report.
Yeah, on the first page under projects, kind of in the middle, when we had the water main assessment from Tunnel at the Hallmark, we got GPS coordinates for the pipeline, so we actually had a surveyor go out there and stake it. So, we now have gone back out there. You'll see in the very last page, a photograph of some pipeline markers that we've put out there from Tunnels all the way to the Hallmark site. That just kind of gives you a sense of what we were doing. The thing I was gonna point out there, just talking with the guys, because today we had a safety meeting rep session, and Stan Olson, one of our lead operators, was leading it. One of the things he shared with us was just poison oak, what to do, what to be aware of when you're working around poison oak. Because he said out there in the brush line out there, just full of poison oak right now. And he said the other thing that they ran into a lot out there were just ticks, just jumping on the guy's pants. They had to be careful when they came back in to make sure they didn't bring anything with them or have any, ticks on their body per se. But anyways, we got that done. So now we've got these pipeline markers out there, which are better, and they actually mark the locations of pipeline. We got out there about 6-7 years ago, you remember that, and kind of marked it based on where we thought we were. So we were comparing that with this, and there were places where we're way off. And, because we just didn't know, that pipeline's deep. So the next thing that we want to do is we're going to be putting some money in a budget request for next year to go into this pipeline. There's some areas where there's some high points, and there's some air pockets in there. And we want to put some air relief vacuum valves and get the air out of there. But, once we get a budget approved, then we've got to work with San Francisco. It's their property, and they're very particular when you get on their property and what you do there, get their permission to go there and do some work.
That's gonna save us some money on energy costs. Too,
Yeah,
because those air pockets reduce the
Efficiency of the.
efficiency of the pumps
Right.
pretty greatly, so.
It looks like the pipe doesn't go in a very straight line.
I think someone just got out there with a backhoe and just went at it, so it just zigzags, and when you look at it on an aerial, it just is,
Toss of 45 in here and.
yeah, it's just, it seems like just
Leftover
whatever they had in
pieces.
the truck. They
Yeah.
just,
No,
you know,
maybe they were following a deer or something,
Well, there may be some, shallow bedrock areas
Yeah,
that
there
they
you
were
go.
trying to get around.
Yeah, that's probably what it is, something like that.
They didn't want to spend the cost of, breaking rock.
Are these supposed to be permanent, these
Yeah.
markers?
Yeah, so you get a hole down in there, and then you put in a cross member that goes across, right? So we stick them in, so they'll be hard to pull out.
Okay.
And evidently they're UV resistant, so they look like that. Hopefully they're gonna stay like that, white and then the blue. But yeah, they're plastic. They're not metal or anything like that. And so I was talking about, you expect these things to stay in the ground? Sam goes, well, they've got this little cross member that goes in there, so it'll be hard to pull out. But and typically you don't see a lot of people on the SFPC property. This is actually on the track site there, right near the Hallmark tanks, the public track site or the school track site out there. So there are some places where there's some public access, and I wouldn't be surprised if over time some kids or some adults or whatever go out there and play with
Yeah,
them.
but that area is pretty visible from the houses this
Yeah.
kind of year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's not like it's going to be in a remote area
No,
where nobody's gonna see them. Whoever's gonna be doing some funny thing, unless they go at night, which they shouldn't go there because it's sunset to sun.
So it's
Right.
not gonna be people in 4x4s wandering.
They don't
around.
allow
they
things
can't-
like that
they
on
can't
there.
I know they don't supposed to.
Yeah, no, I've never seen any, and I jog up there regularly. I've never seen a 4x4 there.
And so the last thing I was just gonna point out on page 101, is the page right before this, under administration, we just welcomed some three new employees in February. Alberto Maldonado, Eric Perez, and Shane Headley. Shane and Eric both have D2 certificates. And Alberto has a D1 certificate, but it's working towards his D2. So as we mentioned earlier, that's 4 people since October that we've hired, and Michael and I and Monique was in there, interviewed another person today. So we're hoping to make him an offer to him, and see if he'll accept it. And then that'll put operations in full staff. And I don't know when the last time we've been at full staff in operations. Yeah.
Great.
So that's all. If anybody from the board has a question or something caught their attention,
Administrative Services Manager report.
The newest thing that I'm working on is the Workplace Violence Prevention Plan. It's a really big plan, and we'll have it done by July 1st. When it's due.
Minus 2.
It's the, what is it, deadline? That's all I have.
Nobody.
Is the preparing information for the July 1st, 2023 actuarial, is that 2024? 2023?
It's in 2024, but it's for
2023, the actuarial for 2023, okay, I wasn't sure. I think
This is part of the audit report?
It's part of the it's the actuarial that, trying to recall exactly how to explain what it does.
It's the actuarial report for the other post-employment benefits plan. So the healthcare plan that is provided to retirees, we have to get evaluation every, well, we have to measure it every year, but we get evaluation. Basically, they reevaluate all the assumptions that go into it every 2 years. So, and this
Yeah,
is the,
this is the evaluation year.
yeah.
This is the evaluation year, and then we'll have 2 years of the measurement period.
And note self to submit, do my form 700.
Please do Form 700. I think the actual due date is the second though, so you got
Okay.
one day
should
before you.
tell us one extra day.
Yeah, exactly, that could be a day buffer, that would have known. Okay, any questions?
You know what you're gonna be doing over the weekend?
Yeah, moving stuff out of my parents' house, that's what I'm gonna do. District managers report. District managers, engineers.
Got a promotion there for.
You did.
It's like a
Half an
nanosecond.
Out of class pay there, I'm gonna put that in.
Yeah, we'll give you an extra 3%.
A nanosecond of.
A nanosecond
class
of, yeah.
Perfect.
Right.
Happy to report that, well, we have one project under design, a water main project, and we've been waiting patiently for a few months, probably about 3 months, for Department or Division of Drinking Water to get back to us on their assessment of a bunch of variances that we had asked for, because we could not meet the spacing that they had they require. And finally, we requested that they just say that we didn't meet it. So instead of trying to resolve it, we asked them to write us a letter saying 90, all the areas are approved except for these areas, and we're not gonna approve them. And typically when that happens, it's happened on a few projects, we proceed at our own risk. So we put letters in the file that we looked at all the options, we look, so we do our due diligence and we record that. And then we move forward. So we're at a good place there, in that we finally have something from DDW that we can proceed with. So the consultant on that particular design is moving ahead with the 95% plan submittal. So we're hoping to go out to bid, in the next several months on that project and start July 1st, construction July 1st. We're working on an update to the CIP. It's more than an update. I would probably call it's a lot more work that we're putting into the CIP. So once it comes to you in June timeframe, the June board meeting is when we typically bring the master CIP list to you, just as informational, and so you you approve a CIP for that particular year, but we bring the master list to you, so you have a. Sorry, I'm not seeing you, but I'm not ignoring you. But we bring the master list so you have it. And so we're working on reimagining the layout and working through a bunch of updates, getting more information on each exhibit and those kind of things. So I learned the word reimagine from the architect, so it sounds really good when engineers use that word.
Sounds very Disney.
Does it? Yeah.
We're gonna start calling you an Imagineer.
Yeah, you're
Imagineer, right.
You're a reimagineer.
Right, and then Old County Road, so those are the two sort of under the engineers report, and I could dive into the Old County Road, which is a separate report. Any questions on those two items? If not, just diving into the Old County Road, knock on wood, it's going as smooth as it can. I keep saying I'm jinxing ourselves, but it's still moving forward at a pretty good clip. So the monetary numbers in here, which are on PDF page 108, are as of February 29th, right? So they're kind of a one month removed. I can tell you for the month of March, things went really well. We had very minimal change orders. So the chart that you see on page 108
represents, as of February 29th, we have 3.75% change order on a project, and we're 55% complete. So that's tracking really well, right? So if it's 10%, it should be about 5.5% change order, so we're below that. I expect that number to be even better once we get the March, because we're seeing what's happening in March, they're proceeding, and we're not seeing too many change orders. The change orders that we're seeing, we're analyzing them. Our construction manager is doing a great job of providing information to Rena and myself and the rest of the team. We meet weekly on the project. A project this size requires a lot of coordination, and so we're meeting weekly, and then if we need to, we're meeting even more than that on particular items. But the stuff that we're running into, we've worked with the contractor, we've been able to resolve it as best we can. We're never gonna get to zero change orders on the project this size, but we're moving at a pretty good clip. We're now coming up on one of the more challenging parts of the project, which is crossing underneath the Belmont Creek. We have a pretty good, no, I shouldn't say pretty good, we have a good plan in place, the best we can at this point with the information that we have. And the contractor, we've gone through scenarios with the contractor as far as what if you run into this, what if you run into that, and trying to think about some worst case scenarios that could happen, to make sure we have equipment on site, to make sure we have contingencies in place for that. So I can't speak enough of our construction management team, Four Leaf. They've done an amazing job on this project, one of the better ones that we've used in the past. So that's it on Four Leaf. That's the one project we have under construction. So there's pictures in the file, or in the report. Working with a 20-inch pipe, it's challenging. It's a pretty good size pipe. It's not small. And Old County Road is really busy, right? I mean, you see all the trench lines and, and so forth. So we're the expression of threading a needle through, that's what we're doing. So just in February, early March, we found that the PG&E, PG&E has a large gas, transmission gas line. We found that, as the report says, it wasn't where we thought it was, even though we had potholed it, it kind of meandered. And so we were able to, on the fly, work with the designer, shift our pipe. And so that accounted for some of the change orders, but those things come up. But you can see in some of the pictures how big the pipe is relative to the people working on it, right? It's a pretty good sized pipes. And then we've gone from, last thing I want to report is we've gone from night work to day work. That has produced some more inconveniences for the businesses, obviously, because before it was all night, no issues. But our construction management team works with them and tries to alleviate any of the issues. The biggest thing is during shutdowns or tie-ins, because it's being done during the day, there is inconveniences for a few hours when we shut down the water. But we've gone through multiple scenarios of getting those businesses ready to the point where maybe providing even bathrooms, for their employees to make sure they're up and running. So, that's it on Old County Road. Is there anything I can answer on that?
Some of the trenching looks pretty deep.
It is, yeah.
You're running into groundwater problems there?
Not yet.
You get closer to the creek. maybe
Yeah,
you'll find
so
something.
we're expecting when we run into, when we get closer to the creek, and we've made plans for that with Baker tanks. Which are these tanks that you pump water into to get the sediment out before you release it. Because you can't, dump water that you pump out of but we haven't run into too much groundwater, luckily. So,
Good.
yeah. I always say, like, I expected Harbor to go smooth and this one to go the other way, and it flipped. So, but whatever, the net is great. So that's all that matters.
So far, yeah.
Yeah, and we're at about 70% right now. So with the month of March in place, so.
Traffic control seems to be going pretty good, because I traveled on Old County Road a couple of times.
Good.
And it just was moving pretty good. I mean, you don't have to wait too long to get through, because there's always one lane that's closed, obviously, so.
We're going to, after the creek crossing, then we're into the intersection of Harbor. So that's gonna be really interesting with traffic control and, you know, working with Caltrain, working with Caltrans, because we're also gonna be impacting, El Camino, which is a Caltrans right away. But, like I said, I think we have the right team for this. So any questions on Old County Road? I have one last, item to bring up.
Yeah, so, Joe, in the case of that gas main, that was not indicated properly, and it was generated a change order. Because PG&E did not mark it properly, how,
It's
How does
still,
that
it was
work out?
still within the tolerances of, I mean, we're threading the needle within feet, you know, and so it was within the tolerances of their markings, but when we physically dug it down, it was over by a
Was too
foot and a
close.
half. The joint trench on the other side was over by 6 inches, and that just reduced the sandwich area where we could go in and,
And PG&E want us to have that, was it a vacuum truck there doing the excavation?
Right,
And if
so-
we shift it over a little bit, then we could go back and use the excavator
Right.
to do the digging a lot quicker. So we compared the cost of having that piece of equipment out there while we were trying to get by this PG&E pipeline versus moving over a little bit. It was just cheaper to move the trench over a little bit.
less of a change order, like
Less
less
of
of
a-
an adder, because
but the change order then would be on us
it,
anyway.
it would be on us. It's a hard one to really go after, because it wasn't significantly off. It was, you know, like I said,
Enough,
these things
enough to create this change order.
for us, but not enough to really create an issue
Okay.
for them. And like Rena said, that because how close we were, they were requiring us to use a specialty equipment, which is a vacuum for excavating instead of a excavator.
Mhm, mhm.
And it just would have been prohibitively expensive to dig a trench with a back truck. It just, and really loud, and it just wouldn't work. So. Those things are expected on a project this size, to be honest with you. And the last thing I want to report is, there's Assembly Bill 2626 that is looking at delaying the implementation of heavy, the battery electrification of heavy equipment, like trucks, the dump trucks and excavators and construction equipment, not the smaller vehicles. And so that's in the committee, Transportation Committee and Natural Resources Committee. So it's something that an association that I'm involved with, American Public Works Association, has worked with the author to submit to the state to look at delaying just the heavy truck portion of the electrification, because there's just not any really good solutions right now to be able to meet those requirements. So that was just more informational. Thank you. Questions?
Joe, thank you.
Financial report.
All right, last but not least, so water revenues, we are trending above budget right now, where we're expected to be. We're just a hair behind our 5-year average of 69.6%. We're at 69.5% of the total budget, but we're still trending up way above budget. So as you saw earlier, kind of got a feel for where we're at. So overall, we're expecting to be at 67% of budget for, all our line items, assuming everything is flat throughout the entire year. So overall, our revenue sources, mainly because of the interest and that payment that we had talked about for the insurance claim, we're at about 75% of total of our budget. And then because of salary savings and other budget savings, we're at about 55% or 53% of budget for our expenditures. So we're, revenues are up, expenditures are down, so we're trending it all in the right direction. Statement of net position, we have, we're at total net position, we're at about 43 million, of which 18 is available for use on, current projects. Some of that has been earmarked for, various reserves. So far, we have earned about $340,000 in interest investment income. And an additional 218,000 we've got as an unrealized gain. So basically, if we were to sell our investments as of 2/28, we would earn an additional $218,000 for that. So. And I just wanted to keep it really brief since I already went over the majority of it earlier. And then the last piece of that is the capital budget to date. That, we still have some remaining budget. We did have some remaining budget, but now we've got them adjusted. So we'll adjust these budget to actuals at the next meeting. So.
Very good. Hearing none. Thank you. Director's reports. Director Schmidt.
Nothing to report.
So I try to do.
I'm good.
Very good. Yeah.
I attended, it's March, HIA meeting, at the beginning of the month, and the city of Belmont presented, actually the police department, was just presenting on safety and how the city overall is doing in terms of public safety. Seemed fine. His only complaint was the Motel 6. So, and I think that's it for me. I'm trying to think if there's something else.
When's the happen thing?
Oh, yes, I attended. It's like a whole month goes by. So, I attended, with the general manager, Assemblymember Pappen had a I think it's called Women in Power Breakfast. So we attended that at the beginning of the month at Skyline College, and she had a few guest speakers there, talking about women and their different careers and trajectories and how we support and uplift each other. But I thought it was a really good use of our time. We had a few minutes with Assemblymember Pappen and we're like, we need money. She said, you can ask for it, you're not gonna get it, but just go ahead and ask anyway. So, and, just trying to make some additional connections to try to see what other networking we can do and other support we can get. Our county supervisor was not there, so I was not able to ask her if the county could provide any support with the flood. But yeah, that was at the beginning of the month too.
Yeah. Feels like
So much has happened since then.
Did Assembly Papa actually say that? You can ask, really?
Yeah, well, I mean,
She said always ask.
yeah,
But she said, but you're not gonna get it, is that?
well, it
She
was only
basically
because
said there's
the
no
state
money.
has a budget
Oh.
deficit,
Yeah, there's
that's why, it
$1
wasn't,
billion deficit.
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't anything
But,
specifically,
you don't
to
ask, you
us.
don't get.
yeah. But it was a good conversation, I was able to share with her some of my background as well, since
Yeah.
she's on the,
She chairs.
well, yeah, the water, what is it now? It's the Water Parks and Wildlife.
Yeah.
Committee.
Yeah, she chairs that committee.
Yeah, I also was able to talk with Gina Pappen, Mayor Belmont, Select Representative Becker's
Yeah, so we
office.
we talked to the mayor, of Belmont also about, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, about some of the projects like Folger, and she said, please, continue to keep us in the loop so we can be your advocates too. It was a good conversation.
It's a very good event.
Speaking of Belmont PD, they ended up, issued I don't know if you saw an email, like a safety alert or something like that. It went out to the community, Belmont PD did. It was about a scam coming through, of people representing be contractors trying to solicit work.
Yeah.
We call that, they knocked on our front door, on our house, and my wife did anyway, and had contractors knock on our front door trying to tell us that they could do our 5-year-old roof for us.
So
I wasn't
helpful.
home. So then apparently, and they were in like a silver Nissan Armada with a ladder on top and a car that no contractor would ever drive around. And so we immediately called it in and they came around and said, yep, Another couple got scammed out of like, whatever, they offered to do a roof for $1,500 deposit.
And then just this.
And then they just took off,
Yeah.
so, anyway. Dr. Wheeler.
So I also attended the HIA meeting, and we had the finance committee meeting. And you saw the results of that. So other than that, not too much.
Very good. I have nothing to report. With that, any communications?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, well, we will take a short break. The public part of this is over. We'll reconvene in closed session.
Do you want me to report out?
Sure.
No. All right, ready? Yeah, I think we actually were recording video, but no sound.
So let's read
Okay.
it.
Well, we're back in open session and the board did not take any reportable action.
Very good. With that, later, adjourned.
And it is 9:19. All right.
Good night, everybody.
Nice.